welcome to the channel. Back on the lime. This one, all done, solid, finished. That one finished. That one next. We should have, hopefully, this room completed today. Because all we've got to do is basically get the lime finish on. I mean, I've done the usual as a lime plasterer. I spent all weekend fretting in case we ended up with some cracks in it, but it's perfect, absolutely perfect, which I'm so happy about. I'd rather not do it on a Friday and then have Saturday, Sunday off, because you can't get in the next day to give it a drink if it needs it. However, the room itself was quite moist, quite wet. I've left some buckets of water in as well, so that's going to sort of vaporise slowly and keep sort of moisture in the room. Anyway, it's paid off, it's worked, no cracks on anything. We're happy. Right, talking of cracks, time to crack on. Right, so we start this morning's proceedings with this this lower wall here. This stuff is pre-mixed putty finish. It's excellent stuff. Just put it in my mixing tub, run the paddle mixer through it, just to get it wet, because when it comes, it's obviously wet, it's in polythene bag sealed, but it's stiffish. So add your water to it and get that lovely workable material. Now this bottom wall here is still quite wet, because it's extremely thick on there. It's the external wall, so all the water's heading that way anyway and passing through it and so on. So we're not going to wet that up, because if I wet that up now, I'm not going to be able to get it travelled up today. Because it is absolutely saturated still. It's not damp coming up. There's no damp at all in that now. It's purely, like I say, where all the water's going that's built up in the room. So we put on our first coat now, making sure that it's tucked right up under that window board there. No gaps under the window board. We've got no electrical fittings on this wall, which is good. We've got no beads to go to, we've got nothing. It's just straightforward, nice and easy. Fire a coat on it. Right, to get it flattish, that first coat. You never get it perfect on your first coat, obviously. But I like to try and get it levelled out quite a bit and make sure that there's no major dips or anything in it. I'm not sure if I've got enough of this pre-mixed stuff to finish the job off, so I'm slaking a big vat of putty at the moment. I picked up a bit of kiln-dried sand this morning, fine kiln-dried, sort of thing that you put in between your block pavers, just a fine yellow sand. So I can make up some putty finish, because I'm not sure if I'm going to have enough. I might have, but it's doesn't go as far as I thought it might. The pre-bag stuff, but I've never used it before. I've always mixed my own. And it's lovely stuff. It contains a bit of the old chalk dust as well, apparently, so it'll give us that nice white finish rather than like an off-white, which is more traditional in my eyes. Bit of a dying art really, this now. Not many do it. And to me it's an enjoyable way of plastering something. rather than just firing dabs on and sticking boards to it and skimming. You know, there's a lot more sort of, well, there's a lot more skill involved, obviously, and there's also a lot more satisfaction at the end of it, knowing that you've gone from a rough, twisted, unplumb wall to something that's nice and plumb and straight and well finished. It's very satisfying. And of course, we're doing it with lime because of issues with damp. I think we've got round all that now, and we would have probably got away with maybe, you know, sand, cement, and skim, but there's no guarantee with that, is there? Whereas with this, you know 100% that any moisture that does come through, it's going to come running out and disappear into the atmosphere. You know, we don't have to worry. Because they've had several attempts on this job, as I've said before, where they've injected it and sand and cemented it and so on, and it's still come back. They weren't addressing the actual problem, and the problem was the floor. Allowing moisture to track from the edge of the floor into the brickwork and then coming up. But because I've put the DPC down at the bottom now, at floor level, any moisture that does get into that brickwork will get in below floor level, and because that's an 8-inch DPC running right through to the outside skin, it can't come up any higher. It can only stay at floor level. So hopefully that has cured the problem. And like I said, any moisture that does build in there for whatever reason can now vent out naturally. Hence the lime. Right, so that's now the first coat on. So we'll leave that for a little bit now, then give it a bit of a flattening off. And then once it's flattened off, I can then give it its second coat, repeat that process, and then once it's pulling quite tight, I can then go over with a very fine sponge, doing the old sort of figure of 8 pattern, and then start flattening off and troweling up, etc. Right, I'll crack on with a bit more, because obviously if I'm just filming the one bit, you're going to get a bit bored with it. So I'll crack on, get a bit more on, and then we'll talk through some other bits in a while. Right, there you go, that's all the first coat on there now. The only bit I've got to do is that head, but I'm going to do that once I've got these something like. Next, I'm going to do the biggish wall over there, and then it's just leaving that head and this bit of a cupboard to the side of me. So fingers crossed, we'll have it all on done today, and then tomorrow, good clean up, get this floor cleaned up for them. It's been a nightmare, this floor, really, because it's plastic asphalt, and of course it doesn't absorb any moisture, so every splash that you're putting of water or plaster or whatever it is, it just turns into a quagmire. So I'll give it a scrape, I'll give it a brush, and then I'm going to put a little bit of this chemical that I've got, which will just soften up all the lime so I can mop it up and get it all lovely and clean. Windows, again, I don't bother sheeting them when I'm doing lime. I know a lot of you lads, you like to get the old plastic sheet and cover everything up. But again, with the lime, I just use it's more or less like vinegar, it's very mild acid. I just paint it on there, and it brings all that lime off, and brings all the plastic up like you, it's good stuff. So, I mean, when I take into account, the time it takes to sheet it up and then to de-sheet it, I could have cleaned it with the acid twice over. So there you go. Right, I'm going to have a well-earned cup of tea now, because I've actually been out and about since 7 a.m. It's the merchants and things, so yeah. So while I'm having my well-earned cup of tea, one or two comments that I was reading through over the weekend. Some of you get concerned at the fact that, I'm not wearing goggles and masks and gloves and you name it, the full PPI when I'm doing this kind of work. All I can say is, do you think that back in the Victorian Edwardian era, the chaps that were using exactly the same material in exactly the same way had goggles on and masks on and ear defenders and gloves and safety boots and hard hats and everything? No. And yeah, you get some in your eye. It's a problem. But how often do you get some in your eye? I mean, I've done, well, probably 90% of this room now. None's gone in my eye. And I'll finish this room and none will go in my eye. Because you're careful. I've been doing this job all my working life. And I can count on one hand the occasions that I've got plaster gone in my eye, whether it's gypsum or lime. So don't worry about it. Somebody put a comment on about they couldn't bear to watch because they didn't have knee pads on, they didn't have a mask on, they didn't have goggles on, didn't have ear defenders on, quite a bit of stone. Well, when I'm doing the stone, normally off camera, I'll have a dust mask on and I'll put my safety things on and I'll wear my ear defenders. But when you're trying to film for people and do something that's kind of realistic and interesting, being full of PPE isn't practical. How can I talk to you when I've got a great big mask on? I can't. It's silly. It's silly. So when I'm filming little bits like that, I'll take everything off and I'll do the little bits of footage and then we'll turn the camera off and then I get all geared up again and do it again. But I don't do it with the lime plastering. I'll go and admit, I don't bother. Sometimes I'll put latex gloves on, but I'm not wearing them today because I've got a rather nasty cut on my finger there. Well, I say cut, it's actually a burn. I had a hole in my glove. PPE on, full PPE, cleaning bricks. And there was a pinprick hole in the glove I didn't know about. And it got me and gave me a really nasty, very deep burn. So I'm not wearing the gloves today because the latex gloves tend to make it sweat. I'm trying to get it to dry out and heal, which it is doing, slowly but surely. Anyway, enough lecture. I'm going to drink my tea and we'll catch you in a minute. That's a lovely bin of freshly slaked lime putty. It's fairly new, it's only about an hour old that, but you can see it's lovely stuff that. Look at that. Leave that for a few hours now and it'll be like a big pot of whipped cream. Perfect for putting fine sand in and making my putty finish. On that brush into that water sealing angle. Keep it clean and nice for the decorator. You've got to make sure when you're doing the line that you get it bob on first time as well, because with your gypsum, you know, you get a little bit of a mark in it or something, you can always put a bit of filler in and give it a bit of a sand off. But with this stuff, you can't sand it because it contains sand. And if you sand it, it brings all that sand out, and you just end up with a hole in your finish. Of course, you can see now the inside of the cupboard's got its coat on as well, which has really transformed the look of the room. Having that back together again. They've got the original doors for this cupboard, which they've taken off. They're like, I think they're a glass panel door type thing. So yeah, it'll look quite nice when it's all decorated and done and doors back on. Yeah. Just keep wiping that bead with the trowel. When I'm doing the lime finish, the putty finish, I tend not to polish it up. I'll leave it so it's not rough, but not over troweled. For the simple reason, you're leaving it so its surface is kind of open, which is better for when they put the paints on it, and it helps with its vapor permeability as well. I mean, you can, you know, if you so wish, you can give it a bit of a rub over with the trowel half a dozen times and get it nice and flat and smooth. But I tend to leave it open slightly. There we go. Clean that edge up. Okay, so that's the main areas now troweled up. I think I'll give the head another do. It's had 3 now, but I think I'll just give it just one more, get a bit more water into it. And it's had the window open all day. Just trying to get rid of some of the moisture out of the room. Yeah, it's called nice, that. Very nice. Probably get hidden behind curtains and things though. Although it's a rather deep reveal on this particular window. Done a bit of hair there. So they're talking about we might have petrol rationing, fuel rationing. I'll have us all the Dios and carts again before long. Way things are going. Have to get the van filled up to the brim, I think, and then if they bring in rationing, at least it's got some fuel to keep me going for a month or so. So don't use a lot in it. Must be where it's local. Right, lovely. Not really a fan of going to the metal bead, but not got a lot of choice really on this one. If anybody knows anybody that supplies the sort of like the round dowel beads, you know, drop me a message, because I can't seem to find anybody that supplies them. You get the P beads, but I can't find anybody that does just the plain round beads. About 20 mil they need to be. Lot of fighter jet activity this afternoon. RAF, no doubt. Oh, it's up there. These cupboards, they used to build them in. You know, your carpenter would come in and build it all in when it was still brick. And then, as I've done here, you'd plaster them in. You know, and you'd think that they'd have done it the other way around, really, but they seem to do that with cupboards. Build the frame in and then and plaster them. And it's the same you'll notice when you strip off things like architrave and skirting boards. They'll have been put on before the finish. So they'll have done all the float coats, and then joiners come in and do all their bit with skirting boards and architraves, and then they come in and do the putty finish. That's how they used to do it. Which in some respects is a better way, because you're working down to the skirting board and to the edge of the architrave and of course filling it all out, getting a nice finish to it, whereas today they put them on after and cork it all. A bit more water. So it's now 3 o'clock. That stuff on that board there, see how wet it is. That was mixed this morning, about 10 o'clock. And obviously it's still usable there. And if I'm to put that into a sealed tub, which I'll probably just put it in the bin overnight actually, in the slaking bin, it'll be good tomorrow. So there's no waste. If that had been gypsum, that would have been going in a rubble bag or in the skip. But with the lime, as long as you keep the air off it, you know, it doesn't matter how much you mix up. You can keep using it indefinitely until it's all gone, as long as it's not had the air get to it. I'll leave that now for another hour or so, and hopefully that should take another wipe. Again, I might have to give it a quick flick over in the morning because it is quite wet there. Although the wall itself was bone dry and I wet it up, which is hindsight, maybe a mistake. Right, it's that time of day again, brew time. But we're getting there, we're winning, we're winning. It's starting to look nice. I'll be glad when it's all on and I've got the room cleaned up, which will be tomorrow. Definitely be tomorrow. I've got a couple of patches in the hall to do as well. Just little bits and pieces where electrician's done some work. But that's just nothing, you know. So we'll do that tomorrow and finish this room. Well, it's now morning, Tuesday morning. Didn't manage to get it all on yesterday. Terrible for drying. It's the bottoms. And I've had a thought on that. At some stage in its past, this room's had a DPC injected, which will be like silicone based and all that kind of stuff, and then probably waterproof sand and cement on top of that on the lower half of the room. And I'm wondering if it's taking forever to dry on sections of the bottom because it's got this silicone crap in the bricks and it's stopping the natural suction from the brick. And I think that's what's causing it. Because everything up to, well, probably 2 foot is lovely and dry. Now we know it's not damp from, you know, coming up and so on. We know it's not that. And the only thing I can think of is where it's been injected and it's had chemicals on it. It's the only explanation. I mean, certain areas dried in lovely at the bottom, but other areas it's taking forever. Also, it's thick. It's very thick in places at the bottom, so that could be another reason, or part of the reason. You know, it's thick There's no suction from the brick. It's taking forever. Anyway, right, so what we're going to do today is fire this one on here. A couple of bits from yesterday morning, which is still a bit damp. We'll give them another bit of a trowel up and another drink. Couple of little patches in the hallway. And then that's it. Everything's on, and it's a case of getting everything out of here, which I think will be today and tomorrow, because the van's absolutely chock of stuff. I need to go to the lock-up, empty the van. I've got a load of board left. I've got 4 bags of calcium oxide. They're not left over, they're actually for the next job. But I needed 1 bag to finish off the floats, and I thought, well, I'm not ordering 1 bag and paying best part of 100 quid for delivery. I might as well get the stuff for the next job as well. Obviously saving on cost. So that's all got to come out and go to the lock-up. Yeah, so I think I'll do all that tomorrow. I mean, it's absolutely hooping it down with rain out there this morning. So I don't fancy having to try and clean everything out and so on anyway. So a bit of a blessing that we've still got this one to do. Right, let's crack on with it. Right, well, that's the first coat on and flattened and everything. I'm just about to put the second coat on. Here we go. I've run out of the pre-bagged, so I've had to make a batch up, a putty finish, using the fine dry sand and the freshly slaked, well, I say freshly slaked, it was slaked yesterday, fine putty. Hence the slightly different colour, because mine doesn't contain the chalk dust, so it's more of a creamy colour than a bright white. Not that it matters, because you know, at the end of the day it's going to get painted in here, so I didn't buy the pre-mixed stuff into it with white. I bought it in because I thought it'd be easier than having to slake my lime and make my own stuff up, but, which it was. Obviously it saved me time. So what we're doing here, we're putting on and we're taking off and filling out and getting it flat as we go. I mean, you could just throw another coat on there and then flatten it off, but I really just want to flatten as I go, because a bit of suction at the top there. Little bit, not a lot. I want to get it as flat and neat as I can as I go. You can actually buy the chalk dust, not very expensive, so I think for the next one, which will be starting in a couple of weeks, I might buy in chalk dust and slake my own lime and make up my own finish. Although it's, like I said, it's a little bit quicker, it probably does work out slightly, ever so slightly dearer, doing it with the old pre-mixed. And the way that things are going up in cost at the minute, I'm afraid every penny on the job is going to count, because I obviously try to look after my clients price-wise. You know, as well as doing a really, really good job, I don't want to rip them off with high prices. You know? So if we can save them a little bit on materials, we will do. It's quite expensive doing it with lime, as you can imagine, because of the work that goes into it. But no more expensive than a damp-proof company coming in and injecting chemicals and sand and cementing everything. You know, they're quite pricey too. There's no guarantee it'll work. Because the thing is with damp, what you've got to do is you've got to address what's causing the damp. You know, because these damp-proof guys, or a lot of them, I'm not saying all of them, but a lot of them, will just come out and go, yeah, you need damp course. You know, they don't say, well, let's see what's causing the problem in the first place. Because let's face it, when these properties were put up, they weren't damp. You know, they've not been damp for years and years and years, and then all of a sudden you've decided to get something done about it. So, you know, that common sense tells you that basically the reason it's damp is because there's an underlying issue. Muck in the cavity, you know, the ground level outside's too high, like this one, problems with the floor. You know, there's a multitude of reasons you're getting damp in. You know, even down to things like it's a solid construction, no cavity. And it's had somebody come along, they've sand and cemented the outside with render or with a sand and cement pointing. That's holding the water and that's causing damp. You know, we've had a few of them in recent years to sort out. Don't like soft corners with lime. Don't mind with gypsum, but with lime doing a soft corner is bloody awkward. Right, so that's the top on there now. Shift my steps, not coming down the wall. So the next lime plastering job is a cottage that, as far as I'm aware, was erected somewhere in around 1804. So it's a fair age. It used to be a blacksmith's cottage. Of course, the blacksmith's long gone. Him and his workshop long gone. But the cottage is, over time, it's been extended, and again, it's had the damp-proof guys in, and it's a solid wall construction. It's actually predominantly cobble on the outside. So your damp-proof boys have been in, and they've injected it with silicone, and it's still damp. And your builder's been, and he's rendered the outside of it with sand and cement mortar, and it's still damp. I wonder why. So we've been tasked with the job of lime plastering the dining room. It was going to be 2 rooms, but we've decided now just to go with the dining room, which is fine. We don't mind that. And I always tell the clients that, you know, the paints that they use, they want something like a clay paint on it, something that's definitely breathable. None of these modern jobs. But you see, the only problem is, you know, these houses, they change ownership. So we come in and we do all this, and then eventually the owners, they sell up, somebody new comes in and they go, well, I don't like the colour, and they nip down to the likes of B&Q or Wicks or somewhere like that and buy themselves a load of plastic emulsion paint and slap it all on, and then next thing they've got damp. Water's not getting out anymore. That's the problem. You know, we line point a building, and again, somebody will come along, just bought the house, I want it modernising, I want it K-rend, and then they've got damp issues again. You know, these solid wall constructions, sort of like your Victorian properties and earlier, really you can't put modern material on them. You know, it doesn't like it. Can you see how it's looking ever so slightly patchy in colour? Well, that's where your sponge comes in, your damp sponge, because you're rubbing it with your sponge and that brings the line to the top and brings the whiteness back into it. You still have it little bits of patch here and there, but not as pronounced as it is now. Of course, in times past, when they were putting a building up, it were a grand town hall or whatever it was, it'd be your mason, whether it be a stone mason or a brick mason, they'd figure out what mortars, they designed the mortar for that particular job and that particular brick, because they knew they had the knowledge. Whereas today, it's either an engineer or an architect will design your mortars. You know, so you get your drawings and it'll say, it's got to be that mortar mix or that mortar mix. You know, it's been taken out of control of the hands of the masons. And, you know, it's like this putty finish. You know, you can pre-buy it, it's mixed absolutely perfectly, or you can make your own. And making your own, you get to know your strengths of it, etc. You know, the rule of thumb is that you're 50% lime, 50% you fine sand. But sometimes you can alter that slightly. You know, like 95% sand, 85% sand. You know, depending on the job. But again, if it was, you know, an architect or an engineer or something like that, you know, a heritage officer, and they're saying it has to be this, it has to be that. The thing is, they've never actually done it. They're just reading that out of a textbook which was written by a bloke that probably never did it either. Just a thought. Right, so our next job is the old sponge. Now, we're not doing this kind of like when you're doing sponge floating on your gypsum. This is doing two things. This is leveling it off and it's bringing the lime to the surface. Okay? It's almost done. Figures of 8, like so. And when it starts to, you feel it starting to grip ever so slightly, just moisten it up with a bit of water. Anybody that is kind of interested in getting into doing this, getting into doing the lime plaster, I highly, highly recommend that you go on a course. Don't just sort of go and get yourself some lime and so on and have a go. You know, it's all good and well watching me on YouTube doing it. You know, you need proper training to be able to do it. Because if you don't, basically, if you don't, what it's going to do, it's going to come and bite you in the arse. You know, it's not as easy as it looks. You know, there's a lot more you need to know. I'm just sort of doing this for entertainment purposes. You know, I'm not here to teach anybody. This is just, you know, people that are interested in these old buildings can see how it was done back in the day. And half the time with a little modern twist on it as well. You know, for example, back in the day, they wouldn't have had a nice Rafina sponge float like this. In fact, you go back to medieval times, they weren't using a sponge at all. They'd be using a block of wood to rub it up. And a lot of the time, of course, when it was in your sort of like castle building days, you know, medieval times, it was your masons that were doing the plaster work as well. So your stonemason, he'd put the building up, and they'd be doing the internal renders. Because a lot of these old castles were rendered inside and out, and they were whitewashed and, you know, looked amazing, and they were decorated on the inside. But over time, of course, that's all gone, and we always think of these old castles just being, well, stone. Well, I've just been informed by the electrician that this particular property had some plasterers in that did the room behind this one, the back room, and they were told to lime plaster it. Why, I think they've had a surveyor that suggested it, but anyway, they were told to lime plaster it, which they said they'd done, and damp's come back. What they actually did a 511 for the floats. One of hydrated lime, one of cement, etc. And then they skimmed it with multi-finish and claimed it was lime plastering. That is terrible. That really is bad. You know, so fortunately we got us in to do this one, which is 100%, 100.1% lime plastering. Right, so that's all sponged up now. So my next job is give it its first wipe. That'll bring out the marks from the sponge. But you can see now how it's brought that lime to the front, which is what we need. Start off, just run that brush across that wall to ceiling angle there. Just clean off any little bits that I've got on the ceiling, so it paints up nice. Same down that corner, give it a bit of a clean off. That. Quite a bit of water on it. We don't want to put too much pressure on at this stage. We're just getting them marks from the fine sponging out of it. Of course, if this was like an old farm cottage from 1701, for example, and it was stone, what we could do with this is basically sponge finish it rather than trowel finish it. But this is an Edwardian property, so obviously the Edwardians, they finished it like this. Working that water into it, making sure it doesn't dry out too quickly, getting all the marks out of it. That's what this wipe's doing now. I'll probably go over this another 2 or 3 times throughout the day to get a nice finish on it and to keep it damp. tiny bit of fat comes off it. Right, well, I'll carry on with that and come back to you when it's all shrouded up and flat and nice. Well, there you go. Voila. That's it. Job done. It's finished. The only thing I have to do now is clean up, get all the tools out, scrape the floors, clean the window off, that kind of stuff, which I'm sure you don't really want me to film and have you sat there for hours bored watching me doing that. So I'm going to conclude this week's video here now, because there's nothing more I can show you that's of interest. And if you have found it of interest, don't forget, hit the like button. Click. It's simple, very important. And don't forget to subscribe if you've not already subscribed. It's free, there's no charge. Again, just hit the button and you've subscribed and you will become one of the gang. Right, well, like I say, I hope you enjoyed it. And we'll see you next time for another episode of Buggering About with Old Buildings. Thanks for watching. See you next time.